What is going on, guys? It's Nick from Surfcasting the Island, back at you with another video. Today's topic of discussion is going to be a little off the beaten path, something I haven't done in a while. It's going to be plug talk, particularly night tides, that type of deal. Just a little background. I'm very, very busy this time of year, and for pretty much all the year for that matter. So to maximize my time, the most efficient time for me to go is at night. So without further ado, I have Steve Foceri with me. He's going to go over his plug bags. He brought two different belts to show two different selections based upon, maybe time of year, where he's fishing, how he's fishing, when he's fishing. I'm going to do the same. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. All right, so in the first segment, we're going to lead off with Steve, and he's going to go over, his experiences and pretty much what he uses and how he's had success over the many years of doing what he does. So
thanks, Nick.
No problem.
Like Nick said, we're talking about bags and how we pack our bags, our plug choice selections in our bags for different time of the year and different places that we go. I brought two bags with me, and there's two things that I usually focus on: current and hard structure. Most of the places that I fish that have a lot of hard structure don't have very much current, and most of the places that I fish that have a lot of current don't always have a lot of hard structure. So we'll start off first with my bigger current inlet open beach bag, where we're fishing a lot of soft structure beneath it. Now, I like to carry everything nice and light. I don't want to have too much stuff, because usually when I'm in any position that I fish, any place that I fish, I'm going to be moving around. I'm not going to spend too much time in one spot. I'll spend maybe 20-30 minutes in one side of the inlet, and then after that tide section that I came for starts to drop, I'm going to move a little bit. I'm going to be mobile, so I don't want to carry as little as I can, but still maintain a certain spectrum of gear. And to do so, I like to have stuff that's going to put out a lot of vibration. So Super Strike bottle plug, standard. This one rattles, makes a ton of noise. And my other option is going to be something like this. This is a sporting wood. Larry makes these. These are great, but quiet. So still putting out a lot of vibration, slightly different profile. Maybe I'll carry the mini version of this. This way I have something that's a little smaller that doesn't rattle. Same thing with darters. Nothing wrong with the standard Super Strike darter. Catches plenty of fish. I have a thing about bright colors. I don't know about you. A lot of the places that we fish that are local in Western Long Island have a little bit of ambient light, so I have a lot of confidence in Parrot. Whether it's early season, late season, full moon, new moon, I've always got Parrot. Of course, I'm always going to have something with a variation of yellow. This is yellow and gold. You can see it's got a lot of hookwear.
Nice.
This plug has caught a lot of fish, especially last season. I had a night with 10 bass on this and one bluefish. And then when I can, I want to make sure that I have a slight variation in size, and when that comes to darters, that can be tough. So Larry makes a smaller one here in sporting wood. His smaller darters are great.
Nice.
So I've got my darters, my things like that covered. I've got my bottle plugs covered, and I want to show you the most versatile lure in my bag. And a lot of people say, well, you're fishing at night. Why the heck are you carrying a popper? Well, this little neck popper,
Yeah, you're going to say it's like almost like a metal lip.
Exactly.
Type of deal.
And it casts better than a metal lip. And I don't have to worry about damaging a wood plug like a metal lip that I paid a ton of money for with a super great pimp job when I've got this in plastic. I can bang this off the jetty all night. It'll outcast the metal lip. And as long as it's fairly calm, it'll swim. And if I'm fishing dusk and dawn, I can still pop it. A lot of nights I have this not in my bag, but in a slight tube that I'm carrying, because I'll have an eel skin on it.
Yeah, definitely agree with, it's very versatile, very similar, a lot of qualities to a metal lip, slow rolling it and that type of deal.
Absolutely, and when you're on just two tubes, you're going to make every single plug count. So every plug in this bag, I know that when the current backs off a little bit or it really strikes up, I got to have something that's going to make it through. And one thing that always makes through in inlets with current, whether you have a lot of current or a little current, needlefish. And of course, Super Strike, can't go wrong. You're going to have them in a couple of sizes and a couple of weights. You have the standards and you have the red eyes. Same thing, I'll have a smaller version with my red eye and a smaller version with my black eye. So other than just packing your bag with plugs, now before I stick myself with a hook there, you want to make sure that you've got a few bucktails when you're in inlets and your places with current. This bag itself just holds 4, which is fine by me. I'm mostly on 1 ounce and 1.5 ounces. That's the majority. I tie my own bucktails. Anything that has a fractional rate will have red. So I know that this is 1.5 ounces. And the ones that are tied, that are on a hole, I'll know that this is a 1 because it'll be tied with its own color.
Oh, wow.
Just makes it much easier.
Very convenient.
Real simple thing. That's it. One thing I really like about gear up bags too is my 2-tube. Got a little spot for my pork rind. And this bag, had them do this custom for me. I've got a little clip here where I can hold my line snips, but more important, I don't know how well you can, I'll hold it up. Boom, plier holder right on the bag. This way I'm not grabbing around on my belt or anything
not on
like
the
that.
belt or swinging around, yeah.
This way I know where it is and I can reach for it. Had a couple of sharks actually hit the plugs last year, and boy was I glad to make sure I had my pliers handy, get them off, and times I just cut the line and said, let me get rid of these darn things, but
Absolutely,
is what it is. The other thing that I carry, soft plastics. Soft plastics are really important in inlets because I can carry them in a lot of different weights. So most of the inlets I'm fishing in, I'm usually fishing less than 10 feet in that inlet, and this 3/4 ounce, this is going to be doing pretty much most of my damage. Again, I have it in a bright color, and I'm going to have the same thing. I have this just a little heavier in a 1 ounce, in a little more natural color, something with just a darker back and a light belly. This pouch is really good because it also has 5 bucktail loops. Again, since this only carries 4 bucktails, I can put another 5 in here. I'll have a 3 ounce, a 2.5, a 2, and then a couple more 1.5 ounces or 1 ounce, depending on how the current is. Other than that, when I carry, and I just want to show the difference between these two, I have the kind of idea in my head about vibration. This paddle tail, this is Joe Baggs Miracle Minnow, I think.
That might be the sand deal, but
something like that.
Something along those lines, very effective, especially this fall.
But the big difference, even though these are sort of the same color, and maybe they're just a little variance in size, this paddle tail puts out quite a bit of vibration, and this doesn't. So I have something that's a little less vibration, a little less noisy, maybe a little more natural, a little more stealthy, and something that's ringing the dinner bell out there.
Yeah, bring attention. It's always good, like Steve has said, to really have 2 different lures that kind of offset each other in that vibration, or that visual presentation matter. One might give off a little flash, one might give off more flash than the other, or more vibration or less vibration. So it's always good to vary.
Just something different.
Yeah.
You might have a few fish that are practically sitting on the bottom that just are not in a feeding mood, or just maybe they're a little lethargic, and that extra kick from that tail really turns them on, and vice versa. Maybe they just want something that's a little more subtle that night. Yeah. It is what it is. One other thing, I got rid of my boga. No longer fishing tournaments. I stopped chasing big fish. The stock is in trouble. Want to get everything in and out of the water as quick as I can. And if I do have a decent fish, I bought this year. This way I'm not hanging a big fish from its gills. This is just a little CUDA tape measure. I'm not going to unroll the whole thing. Just goes up to 50 inches.
Oh,
lay
wow.
this flat. This way you could say, hey, you know what? I did get a big fish. It was a 50-inch fish, or it was a 40-plus inch fish. Take a quick photo, laying him on the sand in the inlet. I'm not hanging him up by his jaw, not hurting him. In and out, they're back in the water swimming away pretty good.
Absolutely, that's a good point too that Steve brought up. It's kind of vital that we keep that stock as healthy as we can, especially for our future generations. And not only that, I don't know if you've ever heard of the length times girth times girth. You could actually, it's a theoretically speaking an estimate based on how the length of the fish, how big it would be pounds wise.
Yep. And deep down, it didn't matter. When I was carrying that boga, I found that 9 out of 10 times I wasn't even using it. I was just picking up the fish, grabbing the quickest photo if I had somebody with me, or a lot of times I was just laying that fish on the sand or a rock with like my foot next to it. So I was like, what am I carrying this thing? I sold it, and I hope the new user gets a lot of life out of it. All right, so moving on. That's my current bag. Points, inlets, open beaches, places with sweep. This is my Boulder field in the North Shore of Long Island, where there's hardly any current. Unlike my gear up, this is just a real simple, this is a 1-tube. I don't carry a lot of stuff in those Boulder fields, mainly because I don't need a lot of stuff. There's not much current, so I'm usually going to fish one area and only fish a few things. I just want to have a couple of different options, usually in size. Standard redfin, really like this in places with no current. This one's loaded. I've got another one in here in a slightly different color, bone. Again, I like bright colors. This one's loaded as well. This one's loaded a little bit lighter. That one swims almost right on the surface. Since I don't have much current in those areas, I like stuff with lips that's going to swim itself. Nice big pikey, swinging that around the boulder with very little bit of current really helps. A couple of floating needles. This is a Gibbs floating needles. These don't get enough love. A lot of people are like, oh, that Gibbs needle, I don't really care for it. I pulled 2 fish out of wildwood in one night that were both over 30 pounds. Not on this one because I had to repaint this one, but on a yellow and white one. This is always a killer, especially when there's very little current. This thing just makes a V weight going real slow. Just bring it in, stop it, bring it in, stop it. Looks very natural. Other option, here's a 2.5 ounce wad lookalike. I can't remember who made this, but somebody made this pretty much just for me.
I have one of those as well. I can't remember the...
Somebody made these. I don't know who.
It definitely has, it doesn't look like your average needle. It's very beefy, bulky.
And I tell you, I don't know how much is yours weighted. This is like a 2.5, I think.
Mine could be almost 3.
Almost 3?
I mean, it's a big plug.
Whoever made them, they put a lot of care into them. This plug is almost 5 years old. It's caught a good amount of fish, and you can see the paint's still doing pretty good on it. It's got a little bit of hook rash, a little bit of hook wear, but not too much. It's got plenty of life left. Again, places that don't have much current, I'm going with a darter, and I'm usually going to go with a smaller one. All right? Actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm usually going to go with a wooden one. A wooden one seems to swim a little bit better when I don't have much current. These are Larry Welcome's sporting woods. So this is his main size. Of course, I'm going to have a little smaller one. There's a little smaller one. Nice bright color. One bright, one dark. And then here's a real secret. These are kind of tough to get. I don't know. I fished with Steve Foceri from North Shore Customs. Great plug builder. This is his big 4 ounce. These are tough to get. They're tough to make. This is one of my last ones of his. I have never fished this one, but a lot of his other ones I've caught some really nice fish. The nice thing about his darters, they don't need a lot of current and they still dart. It's just the angle that he's got up here. You can see it's got a real deep slope.
Yeah.
And if you compare this to a Super Strike, you'll see the slope just goes so much farther back.
Oh, yeah.
So that's pretty much it for places with not much current. And again, no matter what, here's another option similar to a metal lip, except it casts farther. And I can take this out of the bag and say, you know what, summertime's here, I'm going to throw an eel skin on it. And then I've got another option.
Absolutely. And it's funny how you say, you mentioned Super Strikes. A lot of people associate, needles and darters and with Super Strike, and obviously, not taking anything away from them, they make excellent, unbelievable plugs. Steve and Donnie Musso just perfecting a plug over the years, but there's other plugs out there that are just as great, just as great as how they make it. So it's always good to expand your horizon, and that one little change, like Steve mentioned, can make all the difference at the end of the road.
Yep. Last but not least, just like in current, I'd like to carry a few soft plastics, but they're going to be kind of different. I don't want to stick myself. These, if you were to say, if you could have just one option in the Boulder field, well, it'll probably be one of these. This is a Sluggo 9-inch. It's got rigged with the 2 hooks. You don't have to use the rigged versions with the 2 hooks. Sometimes I'll just stick the 1 hook version in there, with the weighted 1/2 ounces that they sell on their website. Here's the 12 ounce version. I do the majority of my fishing in the Boulder field. This is what I'm starting with. I'm starting with one of these. If I don't get interest on something like this, then I start playing around with plugs. If I do get interest on this, my next shot may be to a big rig deal or an eel skin. There may be a much bigger fish out there. Sluggo's work, guys. Jerry Audette has been talking about him all throughout his seminars about how great a Sluggo moves and how fish perceive this. This thing can move, just forget it. I mean, it just moves right. If you don't believe me, go buy one, put it in the water and start playing with it. You'll see how it just moves a lot like a dying fish with just very little action. It's amazing. But then again, that's plastic. Soft moldable plastic is going to move a lot more naturally than hard wood and hard plastic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So pretty much, again, just like the others bags, like to have my pliers right on the bag. This AIO bag really helps too. It has a little spot for it. Oops. Again, clippers. I don't know if you've ever used these. These are Rapala clippers.
Oh wow, those are nice.
Yeah, these are really nice.
Pop out very easily accessible.
Not only that, but in the Boulder fields, I don't use a light. I don't ever like to turn my light on, period. A lot of the Boulder fields I fish don't have very much light, and if I am on a light, maybe it's just my red light. I try to never ever turn it on in there.
Right.
That I could find very easily. It's tethered and it's got a huge set of snips, so I know I'm going to cut the line pretty quickly. But once again, I have it. This is just the way I fish. You want to turn your light on the Boulder field, that's fine. One last thing, again, no more Boulder for me. This just does it. I'm not weighing fish. And I also have another measuring tape just like the other one in here.
Gotcha.
So that's what I'm carrying. Yeah, that's what I'm carrying. That's what I do. And the main thing is I try to just carry a couple variations of stuff. Some stuff that's going to have a lot of vibration, some stuff that's going to have very little vibration, some stuff that's natural, some stuff that's maybe outright straight up fake. I mean, a metal, even though it leaves a great view weak, it swims super mechanical. Nothing swims like that.
Yeah, no, it's not natural.
But it catches fish, and that's why we carry them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we'll continue the session. It was great hearing from Steve. So
thanks for having me, Nick.
Not a problem. All right, segment number 2, I'm going to be getting into my approach. It's going to be a little bit different on plug bags, plug usage. Mine's going to be directed more so towards time of year and how the plugs that I use throughout the year will change in accordance to, obviously we all know the bait patterns and how the moon brings in different bait migrations. So without further ado, the season starts in early spring, sometimes as early as late February, early March, depending on where you're fishing and what strain you're fishing for. But in my case, it's Resonance and Hudson fish. That's what it is. This is a 2-tube bag made by Ebb Point. If you guys don't know him, his name's Miguel. He makes great bags. I'll get into other ones such as Gear Up, and I have a Dark Star bag coming as well. But 2-tube bag, if I want to be very mobile, like Steve has said, the more stuff you have on you, the more nonsense, it's more stuff to get caught up in, and it reduces mobility, and sometimes that's going to do you a disservice. But it's your standard 2-tube, obviously, hence it has 2 tubes. This one has a front pouch. I like to use the front pouch for either tins, bucktails. Sometimes you could even put fork grinds in here like I do have. But plug selection, a lot of times, especially this year in particular, we had a very early run of bunker that held over, to my knowledge, up on the western North Sound. And there's no better plug, in my opinion, than anything at the minnow style, such as, let's pull the plug out and see. This is pretty much the exact plug I was using, just in chicken scratch, but this is Yozuri Hydro Minnow. The thing I like about the Hydro Minnow as opposed to the SP, I don't know if you have any familiarity with the Hydro Minnow, it swims a lot higher in the water column, and when you're fishing rocky points, boulder fields and such, it won't dig nearly as much as an SP or a mag daughter for that matter. So you can really ride up and really fish a phase of the tide at a much lower water level, which extends your fishing time, as opposed to fishing inefficiently, getting snagged, getting hung up, breaking off, having to retie, wasting time with other nonsense especially when you're a lineup of people. The Hydro Minnow, definitely a staple. If I have a little bit of smaller bait around, sometimes there have been peanut bunker when they show up around the same time, maybe earlier. But you got a Yozuri Mag Daughter, a little bit, probably about an inch and a half, maybe even 2 inches shorter than a minnow plug. Again, like Steve has touched on, different cadence, different movement. That could spark a bite, reaction strike, really get a bite and pattern going. I love these things. I've been using them for the past couple of years. I've mentioned them in previous videos. I may have also mentioned the point that they are very, very essential in mimicking finger mullet, peanut bunker, anything of a really short, stubby profile, and there's nothing else that could really match the hatch as well.
Absolutely, when the mullet around, there's nothing better than that mag dart.
Yeah, you look at it, and when I first saw the plug come out, I pictured in my head, this is literally meant to resemble finger mullet. It was funny enough that I said that and mentioned it because there's actually a commercial or ad that's been going around on social media and online. Yozuri, one of the creators, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but the very first thing that they're talking about was in southern Florida in the Key West, how they have the mullet run. And they said that's what they use in the mullet run, the tarper on, and so on. So it was pretty much a mirror presentation, like how we get them up here, they get them down there. It's a universal, great plug for many other things as well. And then, last but not least, I have a bunch of SPs in here, like I mentioned before, very similar profile to that of the hydro minnow. Again, depth, contour, and how far that's going to dive is really going to determine where I'm fishing. If I'm fishing a hole that drops off from a point, maybe an SP. If I'm fishing a big long flat like a lot of the North Shore is laid out, I might want to go something that rides a little higher, like I said. Bucktails don't really apply to me too much on the North Shore. It's not really going to be a bucktail talk. I've had plenty of videos. I know Steve touched plenty upon bucktails. There's no really need for me to rehash that. It was greatly detailed. But yeah, bucktails don't really apply. I might fiddle, with a redfin in my bag. I know I don't have one, but that's another relevant idea, as well as maybe a metal lip. I have a couple lefties I really want to try out this spring, but anything those Gibbs 1.5 ounces would work great too, especially on a lower tide. Redfins, Gibbs, and Gibbs metal lips, anything that can swim higher, hydro minnow. Because sometimes there's certain areas of fish on the North Shore where it gets low and low quick, especially if you're fishing a moon tide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, it all depends. But yeah, this bag, this layout will last me until the bigger bait really starts showing its face on the South Shore. I wouldn't say until like the first week of May. I'll have this bag on hold from mid-March, just before spring officially starts, when those fish really start showing on the North Shore, until the fishing gets pretty consistent. Last week of April or first week of May. That's when the big boy comes out. So we're going to talk about that shortly, and just stay tuned. All right, so now we're going to be talking about getting into late spring, early summer patterns. So you're talking about potentially getting that first run of Chesapeake fish. A lot of the fish I spoke about previously I'd be targeting would be Hudson fish, whether that be on metal lips. Occasionally, not so much bucktails early spring, maybe soft plastics, which I've touched on in previous videos, but I really wanted to give it a hardwood plug talk, something I haven't really put enough emphasis on, especially for anglers that are really getting into the game. This is your standard 4-tube gear up. Anyone hasn't been living under a rock knows that this is probably one of the most profound bags that really started the tube bags, that whole huge trend, especially for those keep guys.
Yep. This is the bag you see. This is the bag you see 90% of the time. The 3 and the 4-tube gear up. This is the bag you see everyone carrying.
It's pretty much, if I had the definition of a golden standard, it would be this bag. Maybe I see the 3 more so than the 4. The 4 is kind of overkill in my opinion for many applications, but I do bring it out because I'm getting to a certain phase in my life where it's more about the big fish and less about the numbers, have you will, because many nights you don't really go where we catch a ton of big fish every night. It's just not the way it goes, especially with the way the fishery is. But feature wise, you got your water bottle holder, you got a pork rind holder. Unlike the 2-tube's a little more compressed. Similar to that, I didn't mention it on the 2-tube, but it also has belt loops. I don't have my belt with me, just wanted to talk strictly about my bags. But usually I would just put this, it's a shoulder bag, and since it has D-ring wetsuit clips, I would just attach it right to my belt, especially if you're walking out pretty far over your waist. The bag won't ride up, it won't be a pain in the ass, it won't be getting caught on you, that type of deal. Obviously it's called the 4-tube, it's got 4 tubes. I don't have any bucktails in here. Again, it's not really giving me much of a bucktail talk. If you want to hear more about that, you can see one of my previous videos. Plastic tube in the back for any swim shad, soft plastics, that type of deal. But if I'm targeting bigger fish, especially at night, I know it's going to sound very cliche when I say this to a lot of people, but if you want to catch big fish, you got to target big fish. And targeting big fish means you have to, a lot of times, I know there's exceptions to the rule that elephants eat peanuts, but typically speaking, the bigger of a lure you throw, if there's a big fish there, chances are you're going to draw that bigger fish out of that smaller body of fish. and it's condition based as well. I would love to touch on condition based, take it in a little bit of a different direction that Steve brought it in. What I mean by condition, what type of bait's around, how big is the bait, how accessible is the bait, how well can I mimic that bait, what can I use in terms of plug selection to mimic that bait. Well, it's very simple. If I feel like if I could reach those fish in a very, tight vicinity, whether that be an open beach, even back bay, throwing bigger plugs, which a lot of people don't do, or inlets. If I have light, moderate conditions with a north wind, very little wave action, can't go wrong with the metal lip. There's bunker around. I believe this is a Tattoo. I think Christian makes these. This is the regular metal lip. I also have this troller. The troller dives a little deeper. The 3 ounce metal lip I would throw. I really want a plug to ride up high. I know many of the open beaches, like Field 6 per se, now doesn't really have as deep of structure as it used to.
Yeah, really flattened out.
It really, storms really screwed it up over time. I might just go with a regular middle lip, bend the eye up a little bit or down. I forgot which way it goes. You play with the eye, not the actual eye that looks at you, but when you attach your line, you might know.
Absolutely. The best way is think of George Costanza and say, I do the opposite. You want it to swim down, bend the eye up slightly. You want it to swim up, bend the eye down slightly.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I've always heard that. I just wanted extra input. I know Steve knows his stuff on this. But say if I'm, fishing the rip, everyone's very familiar with demo and the rip. Not that I fish out there much, but the handful of times I have gone out there. Might want to go with a troller. Troller dives a little deeper. But the only downside, one of the downsides I'd say to throwing metal lips and trollers like this is they don't really cast well in an opposing wind. They cast more like a shoe. For that matter, they don't really, there's no such thing as a castable metal lip when you have conditions like that. If you start having, your moderate to heavier conditions and the bunkers around,
Old standard.
might go mag daughter, bigger mag daughter, maybe an SS daughter, depending on how much current I have. If I have sweep on the open beach or an inlet where I'm fishing, I might go to a regular daughter. If the conditions are a little more moderate, I have a choice between, a mag daughter or even something else I'm going to mention, needlefish. And the funny thing about a needlefish, as Steve touched upon, it's something you have to have in your bag at all times. I really learned that this year. Because unlike some of these other plugs that are, I say, quote unquote, and William Muller has touched upon, he calls them quote unquote niche lures. There's only certain times you could throw a metal lip. He said the metal lip is pretty much the niche of niche lures. You need just the right bait, just the right separation. The game fish have to be chasing out individuals, that type of bait has to be. So everything has to go. You have to have the right conditions to throw it. But I'll just pick up your standard yellow over white super strike. Can't go wrong. I've had other friends tell me and other people tell me, oh, you're throwing a needlefish, there's a bunker around, or there's thicker body baits around. Biologically speaking, if you look at the anatomy of a bunker and everything, yes, they're wide body, but face on. If you actually look at a bunker face on, just like a needlefish, they have a very flat profile, and that's not really much different to how a bunker looks when a bass is looking head on on it. Especially the eye placement of a bass is they're looking up because their eyes are face pointed towards the top of their head. So how they target it, a lot of people don't understand. I didn't understand for the longest time how effective a needlefish could be, but they work. But again, hey, it's just a stick floating through the water. But bass love it. I know I have other variations in here. Again, you can still imitate a thicker body bait. I mean, this is a Tsunami, or I have a couple Gibbs in here. This is a thicker body bait. Great for imitating sand eels, obviously. Sand eels are slim and slender. But I'd say the biggest upside to a needle out of anything other than its versatility is it's uninhibited by wind. Okay, it casts a lot very effectively, like a 10 or a Charlie Graves or something that could really cut the wind on like a lot of the plugs I mentioned in here so far.
And you can fish multiple water columns.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, especially regardless of the current. You're able to play around, just go slower, go a little faster. You could fish a variety of water depth with needles.
Yeah, I really agree with that too. And something that, you know, Steve, he talked on the fact of bucktails, very similar to its versatility regarding a bucktail. You know, you can fish at very different, varying water columns. You fish it high, you fish it low, you can fish it deep, you can fish it fast, you can fish it slow. So, you know, having a lure in your bag that could kind of really, you know, shape the mold and do a little bit of everything is something you really need to take into consideration. Surf casting as a whole, it's not really something that you could take one-dimensionally. You know, if you're a one-dimensional fisherman, you're only going to catch them when the fish are doing that. There's been many instances where, you know, if you don't get comfortable doing a little bit of everything, even if you can't do one thing amazingly, if you can do everything good and satisfactory, you'll outfish the guy that could do one thing great. But going to the total opposite end of the spectrum, if it's really honking and really ripping and, you know, you can't see the horizon every time a set of rollers comes in, other than a bucktail, like I've mentioned over and over again, go to a bottle. You can't go wrong with a bottle. It'll hold in, you know, any type of water, the roughest of the rough. I mean, pretty much what people would say, quote unquote, it's too nasty out to go. This is when the bottle or a bucktail comes out, because that's the only thing you can throw. Yeah. This is an SS bottle. They only come in 3 ounces, I think. Many of them, unless I'm mistaken. A lot of the guys at the Rip, that's what they throw. A lot of the Eastern Inlets guys throw that, because it's very, very, very different than the inlets we have, like Rockaway and Jones, and you know, that's why the bottle doesn't really come out for me too much. I don't really fish conditions that really cater that, but when I do, I'm really damn glad that I have one in my bag. But I'd say most of what dominates my bag when the bigger bait's around, like I said, the bunker, any of these things imitating herring, shad, anything like that, it's going to be dominated by daughters, mag daughters, metal lips, and needles. I mean, you're not really going to need much other than that, you know, at nighttime. This is a night talk, obviously. People would ask if I had to change this bag to a day talk, you know, put a couple poppers in here, Cordell's, those 2 3/8 sounds, little necks like Steve.
Yep.
You know, mentioned. I really got to try that at night. I haven't really even thought about that, you know, making it like a metal lip, but
try it with an eel skin too. And it's so, I don't, have you ever seen the video that the guys from the Comanche did about making the eel skin?
Comanche surf. I've heard of the guys, but yeah.
Real simple. Maybe we'll even do something on that. I don't know. But very easy to turn that plug into an eel skin plug that casts much better than a metal lip. And that's a real key. You know, sometimes it doesn't matter if the fish are there and you can't reach them. What are you going to do? Sometimes you really need that extra distance, and that's a great plug just to have around.
You know, it's just like, again, it's like a needle or a bottle, something that can really slice the wind when need be. Yeah, like I said, a lot of these plugs I mentioned, for this bag in particular, this will cover you. This could be primarily an open beach inlet, Boulder field talk. Again, this is kind of, in my opinion, this size bag is kind of overkill for the North Shore. I feel like a 2 or 3 2-2 bag with, you know, red fins, Cordell's, that type of deal, smaller stuff, smaller presentations on lighter rods. I mean, you throw these plugs on a 108 1L blank and the thing's gonna snap in half. So a lot of the guys, I know you probably know, a lot of these plugs are thrown on, you know, the GSB 132 1M. You can't go wrong with that. That's the golden standard. Wetzel, all those guys pretty much golden stapled that as the standard.
Yeah, it's been around a long time, the 132 1M, mainly because it works.
Yeah.
It works. I have one. I'm usually on it paired up with the 275. Before I had the 275 on there, before we all went to Van Stalls, I had a 706 on that for a very, very, very long time. And no matter what, that rod is going to handle pretty much anything that swims.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's one of the rods, in my opinion. I've been fishing Lamaglass for quite some time, and they throw everything, you know. They can do a little bit of everything. You know, a lot of rods today, they do one thing or two things very well, but I want versatility, something that's going to really handle multiple things and be able to do like the Swiss Army knife of trades. So that pretty much sums it up for me. I would just want to thank Steve for taking his time.
Thank you for having me.
It was great to hear from someone that has a lot more experience than I do. So we can both spread the knowledge down to future generations regarding how to preserve the species, how to target the species, how to respect the sport, and how to respect each other.
And have fun out there.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, have more fun, lighten up with the way things are going in the world. Yeah. So
that's it. That's why I got rid of the boat. Go out there and fish for fun.
Yeah, fish for fun, and that's it. So appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate our time, and stay tuned. Please like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you.